Alright, hello and welcome to the video lesson. In this lesson, we're going to be diving a little bit more into HTTP request headers. So the headers, as we've mentioned before, are basically something that allows you to pass in additional information with an HTTP request, and also a response will additionally have HTTP headers, which can contain some more information about the response. And so here we're going to be passing in an access token to our request using headers. And so we can take a look at this page here, which is talking about bearer authentication. And so this is part of the OAuth 2 standard, and it's a way for sending an access token in an HTTP request, which is used by a server to authenticate that request. So basically the token is like you can think of it like a password. So this is basically a token which you can get based on authenticating with some service. And this token is just some long arbitrary string of data, which then you can supply in additional requests, which is basically used to confirm that you still are authenticated to use that particular service. So feel free to read through this page if you want some more details about the bearer authentication token. For now, we're going to basically have a very simple illustration of how this works. So we want to have our function here, send authorization header, and so of course we're going to have a try catch, return an error occurred, and then we're going to have our URL, and this is going to be at our /API/headers route. So we're still using our example HTTP server here. So let's go ahead and get the URL, this one, and we're going to have that /API/headers. So we have yet another endpoint set up for us. And if we take a look at that endpoint, come back into the code here, you will see right here /API/headers. And so this is handling our this particular request. And so we'll come back and look at this code in just a moment. So we have our URL, and then we're going to have let's see, our options, request init, and our headers. So we want to have this authorization header, and this is going to be like we see here, the string bearer and then our token. So we can say bearer, and then we can put our token right here. All right, and then we have our response is going to be await, fetch, pass in our URL and our options. And I believe this is fine. This will still make a GET request. If we wanted to, we could say method is GET. I don't think that's necessary. And then we're going to have our text response, await response.text, and return the text. All right, let's go ahead and run the tests, and we will see that this passes the tests. Okay, and so we can go ahead and uncomment this to test out our function here, and it still passes. And so we will see this here. So we have this result, and it says try this token. So let's copy this token and paste it here and run this again. And now we see the result says okay. So let's now come back and look at our implementation. So this method handler here, it's going to take the headers, and it's going to look for this authorization header. And then it's basically getting that as the token, and it's checking to see if this token is equal to bearer and then this particular string here. And if it does, then it's sending a status 200 and it's sending okay. And if it doesn't, it's sending a status 401 and it's saying try this token instead. So of course you would never actually have a real token like this just hard-coded in your database, and this is just some random string that I typed myself. It doesn't actually represent what a token would probably look like in a real system. But of course, this is just meant to be a simple illustration for us here. This string is arbitrary and it doesn't have any real value in terms of an access token, so this is perfectly fine for our purposes here. But as a side note, just for your reference, you never want to be hard coding sensitive data like this, like API keys or access tokens, into source code. This is always kept out of source code as a best practice. So for us, we're just doing a very simple illustration of how potentially a token could be checked from the headers, and then if the token does not match what you are expecting, you can return a status 401. So if we come back here and we actually do console.log response.status, and we change this here, we will see that we get the 401 status when we pass in the wrong token, and when we use the right token, we get the 200 status. And you may have noticed, but probably not, that down here at the bottom of the page we have this 401 response, which is the typical response for unauthorized. And we will see a bit more about these status codes in the next couple challenges, but for now, just know that the status code basically represents the status of the response, and typically 401 status means that you were unauthorized to make the request. So that's kind of what we're illustrating here, that if you use the wrong access token, you will get a status 401 response, and if you use the right access token, you will get a status 200 response. And all of this is based on sending this additional access token via headers in our request. And with that, we're going to wrap up this video. I really would recommend taking a quick look through this page here and maybe looking for some other information about OAuth 2 and bearer authentication tokens if you are curious for more, because this is a very important topic which underlies a lot of the authentication which is used for web security and web requests. Okay, with that, we are going to just go ahead and wrap up the video, and we will see you in the next challenge.